Hello. Today I am brought to you by the power of rock and roll. Yes, you may have guessed from the attire that we have a certain rock and roll theme going on today, because I'm going to read you from my novel launched today, a time travel novel that is named Time Travel in Rock 1984. Why 1984? Well, in fact, you might have noticed from the hat, the scarf there, and even my, here we go, Kiss Army dog tag that I used to wear in corporate meetings for years, that we have a Kiss theme. Sadly, Manowar, Born to Conquer Every Shore, no, sorry, Born to Live Forevermore, The Right to Conquer Every Shore, Manowar. It's not actually brought to you by Manowar, it's just that I've worn out all of my Kiss Tour t-shirts and Manowar is all we have left. Anyway, I went to a concert in 1984 and saw Kiss, Bon Jovi in support. Decades later, quite a few decades, I wrote this book. It's a pivotal moment where the characters are at that concert. It combines a sort of rock and roll with Cold War spy thriller. Plus, there's other stuff going on in here as well, to do with the characters as they develop through the series. So I'll read to you from this book, and incidentally, in the background, you should be able to see the pencil drawing from the marvelous Vincent Sammy. This is the pencil drawing that became the artwork. So to just unfortunately, I can't really read to you from the concert scenes because there's too many spoilers. So I'm going to get started with a relatively calm scene in between the frenetic adventure. But just to tell you who's who, that's Stiletto Coldwell, the sort of protagonist of the series, and this is his new partner. She's called Zudge. For various reasons, they are behind the Iron Curtain in 2029. In the English People's Democratic Republic. So they are in the heart of Soviet London, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of this central secure zone called the Isles zone. So, let's get cracking. We sat in silence, enjoying the late afternoon sun from our bench on the north bank of the Thames. Mere yards to my left was the security barrier on the approach to London Bridge. After the pandemonium and shocks of the previous day, there was a surprisingly soothing rhythm to the river. The stop-start vehicles and foot traffic negotiating the checkpoints across the bridge, the watery ballet of the bright red and white patrol boats crisscrossing the Thames, occasionally drawing up alongside river traffic to make snap inspections and generally throw their weight around. Zudge and I weren't speaking to each other, but I was talking furiously to myself. I alternated between cursing myself for making rash claims and congratulating myself for throwing off the shackles of the Time Dogz and acting on instinct, as was my true nature. As for Zudge, when I glanced her way, she gave no reaction. No blanking me, no scowling, but no encouragement either. Most people would be hurling curses at me for making those promises to the Spanish spies without checking with her first. Not Zudge. As far as I could tell, she was quietly biding her time until I began to make sense again. And she was right to do so. I'd almost figured out how to smuggle the spies out of the Isles, and my idea was sheer genius, though I would need Zudge to tell me how to make it work. Together, we made a great team. Two uniformed border control guards walked past, carbines slung over their shoulders. I noticed the blue bands around their hats and remembered to think of them as blue tits. They gave us the barest of acknowledgements, a minuscule nod of respect. The border guards weren't sure who we were, but we dressed and acted as if we were high up in the INGSOC hierarchy, the kind of bureaucrat that a lowly blue tit offended at his peril. The night before, we'd been running through sewers, surviving gun battles with the ISD, smeared with blood and shit and generally fleeing for our lives. So I would forgive you for thinking that sitting in plain sight at one of the most heavily guarded points in London was somewhat, let's settle on the word, rash. But I'm not as stupid as people like to make out. Hide in plain sight, as the saying goes, if you've got balls big enough to do so. And nowhere was more in plain sight than here. Besides, we were hoping that the ISD didn't have a good description of us or any real idea of who we actually were. Neil Francis, our assigned toady from the Ministry of Planning, could pick us out from security camera footage, and my plan was relying heavily on the police not having reached Neil yet. And all the ISD people who'd seen us so far couldn't pick us out on account of us having shot them all dead. It was possible that we remained completely beneath their radar altogether. After all, it had been the Spanish spy Vasquez that they'd been following the night before. I hoped she was okay. After the sewers, we'd given the Spaniards an earpiece so we could contact them and a rendezvous point for the early hours of the following morning. Then we'd separated. Zaj and I hung around the dark alleys of Iles, London, relying on our enhanced hearing to warn us when patrols drew near. We waited until the morning, when busy Londoners began travelling to work. Then we used our last dollop of control gel on a woman who exuded wealth and privilege. By the way, we'd started the day before with 3 doses, 2 of which had been in my jacket pocket for easy access, the same pocket that had taken several 9mm Soviet pistol rounds. Presumably the gel doses were somewhere still in the London sewer network, being nibbled by the rats, and I wondered whether rodents were now mind-controlling each other. Back to the humans, and I'd hoped our rich new best friend could provide us with an apartment where we could wash and hole up for a while, but unfortunately she'd commuted from outside the secure zone. So no apartment, but she did have plenty of money and access to hard currency too. First, we had her buy us basic but clean clothing to replace our badly stained garments. Then we bought more clothes, moving up in quality and in price. Then we restyled our hair, and finally let her take us to one of the finest tailors in the Isles, the kind of place where they measure you up precisely, and then you come back next week for the results. My colleagues are seeing the junior director of planning at midday, our new friend explained to the tailor. What can you do for them in an hour? The tailor clucked, and he fussed, but an hour later I was wearing perfectly tailored clothes for the first time in my life. Yes, even better than that gentleman's outfit in 1848. In terms of pattern and colour, my jacket, shirt and trousers were very much the same as other bureaucrats and office workers. For men and women both, it was all greys, browns and blues. But our fabric was higher quality and the tailoring perfect. Everyone could see we had privilege now. Like those blue tits who'd given us respect just to be on the safe side. Some people crossed the street to avoid us, presumably through fear. So we sat on our bench by the river and allowed the Will to wash over us while I went through maps and books inside my head as I refined my genius idea. And when I was ready, I gave my pitch. Look at the city, Zutch. Really see. Behind the city's modern facade of glass, steel and concrete are the secrets of its many former selves. A palimpsest of civilizations, each living behind fragments of their existence, preserved like relics in a living museum of time. Like an archaeologist of dreams, you can trace the Roman era in the elegant geometry of the modern roadways, or descend into its subterranean depths, where the veins of forgotten rivers still course through the city's heart, remembered only in the names of the streets above that flowed not with water, but with people and with carriages. Stillo, descend further, into the depths of the London Underground, and you will find a realm there where past and present intersect. Abandoned tube stations, like forgotten chapters in a book, lie dormant and untouched. Here you can stand on platforms where commuters from a different time hurry to catch their trains, their echoes still resonating through empty tunnels that Stello! What? Do you even know what the word palimpsest means? Well, it's... I knew my eyes blanked as I looked up the word, so I frowned as a cover and asked her, do you know what it means? For the first time, her cute face registered disappointment. My schooling was patchy, I explained defensively. Gave up altogether by the time I was 11. I was a barely educated ruffian born on the wrong side of respectability. Then the Time Dogz came along and rammed 1,000,000 books inside my head. Books written by people who know stuff, such as how to use words properly. She still wasn't getting what I was saying, so I spelled it out. I was quoting from a book written by Phyllis C. Challen and Boyd, St. John's Press, 1922. She studied at Oxford University. It says so in her bio. Was never awarded a degree, though, because women in those days could study at university but wouldn't be awarded degrees at the end of it. That turned her into a suffragist, so I figured she was tough, clever, and an outsider. Don't you get it? I don't have to be the thick idiot anymore, because now I can express myself using other people's words, educated people. She touched my hand. I like your words, Stiletto. Don't be afraid to use them. That doesn't sound likely. I'm serious. Words were dangerous in my world. You're the only person who can really understand that. Conversations were always closely guarded, kept as bland as possible in case you slipped up and were accused of a speech crime. Words came out, but we never talked. But but me. I get it. I don't give a shit. Gotcha. I restarted my spiel, and this time I said it stiletto style. Secret places have always fascinated me. The weed-choked steps leading down to dark openings where no one respectable would ever venture. Cities are full of them, especially big places like London. That Phyllis Binter liked her Romans, and she had a point. London Bridge is the only way into Isles from the South Bank, and the reason the bridge is here, on this particular bend of the Thames, is because that's where the Romans decided to build their bridge 2,000 years ago. And the reason they built it here was because decades earlier, Roman traders had chosen the spot where we're sitting to set up an ad hoc trading point. And that's why the International Labour and Enterprise Zone is here in 2029, and not a couple of miles downriver, all because some Roman merchant captain just happened to drop anchor at this bend in the river over 2,000 years ago. The consequences of that chance decision are still rippling through time. I love that stuff. I paused to gather myself, because the important bit was coming up. I nodded at the river, at a point about a dozen feet in from the bank. See those things? Like a pyramid of blue poles sticking out the water. They're called dolphin piles, and they moored boats to a pier that's no longer there. But go back 140 years, and they were used to moor a caisson, which is like... I struggled to find my own words. Like a big cup placed upside down in the river, trapping the air inside so miners can dig into the riverbed. You mean there's a tunnel? Damn right there is. It runs between the two dolphins, so passes pretty much right underneath this bench. It's been abandoned since 1900, but according to everything I'm reading in my head, it should still be there in this time period. All this time, I've been wondering how to get through the security barriers, Zudge said. But we don't need to get through them. We go underneath. Just one question. How do we get into the tunnel? I shifted uneasily on the bench. I was just coming to that. So, there you have it. A relatively quiet chapter, but it turns out a very important one, not least in the way that Zudge and Stiletto grow together somewhat. So, that's out today in paperback, and if you wanted to get the first one, The Past Sucks, before the ebook comes out on April the 4th, you can download it for free from humanlegion.com. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.